The bridge of the alien ship Valiant Spear hummed with quiet power. Admiral HFY stood before the main screen, his 6 arms folded behind his back. Before him stretched the largest fleet ever assembled in the galaxy. 847 warships from 12 different alien races, all united for one purpose. They were going to destroy Earth and wipe out humanity forever. "Admiral, all ships report ready," said his communications officer. The being's voice clicked and whistled through the translator. HFY nodded. This was the moment he had waited for. 3 years ago, humans had sent their first ships beyond their solar system. They had found alien colonies and tried to make contact. But the galaxy already had rules. Humans were too violent, too unpredictable. The Council of 12 had voted. Humanity must die. The human fleet was pathetic. Only 23 ships hung in space near Earth's moon. HFY's scouts had counted them 3 times to be sure. The humans had fought hard as the aliens destroyed their outer colonies one by one. But now they were trapped. There was nowhere left to run. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human flagship UES Defiance. He was 42 years, old with gray hair and tired eyes. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet desperation. They all knew they were about to die. "Sir, enemy fleet is moving into attack formation," reported Lieutenant Lisa Park from the tactical station. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and steady hands despite the fear in her voice. "I count 847 hostile ships." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. 800 against 23. It wasn't even a fight. It was an execution. "Chief Baker, how long until the new system is ready?" Morrison asked. Chief Engineer Carl Baker wiped sweat from his forehead. He was a big man with thick hands that could fix anything. But right now, those hands were shaking. "Sir, the phase displacement generator is still experimental. We don't even know if it works. Will it blow us up if we turn it on?" "Probably not, sir." Morrison almost smiled. "Good enough. Get it ready." The alien fleet moved forward like a wall of death. HFY watched his screens show the massive formation. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, cruisers armed with planet-killing weapons, fighter swarms that could blot out stars, all of them moving toward the tiny human fleet. "Begin the attack," HFY ordered. Space erupted in fire. Alien weapons reached across the void, striking human ships with terrible force. The UES Liberty exploded in a ball of flame. The UES Freedom lost half her hull and began spinning out of control. Human return fire barely scratched the alien shields. Morrison gripped his command chair as his ship shook under enemy fire. "All ships implement Plan Omega. Activate phase displacement on my mark." "Sir, we still don't know what will happen," Baker called from engineering. "We know what happens if we don't try it," Morrison replied. "All ships, Mark." Captain Ryan Hayes sat in the command chair of the UES Phantom. His ship was the smallest in the fleet, built for speed and stealth. As Morrison's order came through, Hayes looked at his crew. They were all volunteers. They had all agreed to test the experimental technology first. "Power up the phase generator," Hayes ordered. The engineering officer, a young woman named Beth Stone, worked at her controls. "Phase generator online. Power at maximum. Engage." The UES Phantom began to change. At first, nothing seemed different. Then the hull started to glow with a strange blue light. The edges of the ship became fuzzy, like looking at something through water. On the alien flagship, a sensor operator made a confused sound. "Admiral, I'm getting strange readings from one of the human ships." HFY looked at his screen. The small human ship appeared normal, but something was wrong with the sensor data. The readings kept changing, as if the ship was there and not there at the same time. Hayes watched his instruments with growing amazement. "Engineering, what's our status?" "Sir, all systems are normal, but our mass readings are dropping. It's like we're becoming lighter." The alien fleet continued firing. A massive energy beam from a Zentari dreadnought struck the UES Phantom directly. The crew braced for death. Nothing happened. The beam passed right through the ship as if it wasn't there. Hayes stared at his screens in shock. Did we just... Sir, the energy beam went through us, reported the tactical officer. Our hull is intact. No damage at all. On the alien flagship, panic began to spread. Admiral, our weapons are not affecting the target, the weapons officer reported. All shots are passing through the human ship. That's impossible, HFY snarled. Increase firepower. All ships concentrate fire on that vessel. Hundreds of alien weapons fired at the UES Phantom. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and missile swarms converged on the small human ship. All of them passed harmlessly through the hull as if it was made of air. Hayes realized what had happened. We're not fully in normal space anymore, we're phased out of reality. The UES Phantom moved forward, heading straight for the alien fleet. The massive ships tried to block its path, but the human vessel passed right through them. It flew through the hull of a battle cruiser, emerged from the other side, and continued on. Morrison watched from the UES Defiance as the impossible happened. All ships, did you see that? Sir, the Phantom just flew through an enemy ship. Lisa, Park reported. Her voice was full of wonder. How is that possible? Baker's voice came over the comm. Captain, I think I understand what happened. The phase displacement doesn't just hide us. It shifts us into a different dimension. We can see them, but we exist in a space between spaces. Hayes tested his new ability. He flew the Phantom directly at another alien ship. The enemy vessel fired everything it had, but the weapons passed through harmlessly. Hayes took his ship, through the alien hull, and fired his weapons from inside. The alien ship exploded from within. HFY watched his sensor screens in growing horror. One small human ship was destroying his fleet, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His weapons couldn't touch it. His shields were useless. The human ship appeared and disappeared like a ghost, striking from impossible angles. Admiral, we're losing ships fast, his tactical officer reported. The human vessel can attack us, but we cannot attack it. How many ships have we lost? 43 and counting, sir. Morrison made his decision. All ships activate phase displacement. Follow the Phantom's lead. One by one, the human ships began to glow with blue light. One by one, they became translucent and ghostly. The alien weapons stopped working entirely as the human fleet shifted into the space between dimensions. Within an hour, the largest fleet in galactic history was in full retreat. Admiral HFY's mighty armada fled in terror from 23 human ships that moved like ghosts and struck like nightmares. Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the alien fleet scatter. Chief Baker, I want this technology on every human ship in the fleet. Yes, sir. But, sir, I don't think we're fully human anymore. Morrison looked at his hands. They were starting to glow with the same blue light as his ship. Maybe that's what we need to be. The first battle was over. Humanity had survived. But they had become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They had become ghosts among the stars, and the universe would never be the same. 3 days had passed since the great battle near Earth's moon. Admiral HFY sat in his command chair, staring at reports that made no sense. His massive fleet was being torn apart by an enemy that shouldn't exist. Admiral, we've lost another 12 ships in the Proxima sector, his communications officer reported. The alien's voice trembled with fear. The human ships appeared inside our formation, attacked from within our hulls, then vanished. HFY's 6 arms clenched into fists. Half his fleet was gone. Ships that had taken decades to build were now floating wreckage. And he still didn't understand how the humans were doing it. Show me the sensor data again, he ordered. The main screen flickered to life. It showed the attack on Battle Group 7. One moment, space was empty. The next, a human ship materialized inside a Zentari cruiser. The cruiser exploded from the inside. Before the debris finished spreading, the human ship was gone. That's no ship we know, whispered the sensor operator. It moves like a ghost. On Earth, Dr. Susan Wright worked without sleep in her laboratory deep beneath the Pacific Defense Center. She was 38 years old with brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Coffee cups and food containers covered every surface around her workstation. She hadn't left the lab in 2 days. "Doctor, you need to rest," said her assistant, a young man named Peter Collins. "Can't rest," Susan muttered, studying the readings from the phase displacement generators. "We accidentally discovered something that breaks the laws of physics. I need to understand how it works before we lose control of it." She pulled up another data file. The numbers still amazed her. The phase generators weren't just hiding the ships or making them invisible. They were shifting matter into a different layer of reality. The ships existed in a space that touched normal space but wasn't part of it. "Doctor, Captain Morrison is here to see you," Peter announced. Captain Morrison entered the lab looking tired but determined. He had been coordinating the defense of human space from his flagship, but he needed answers that only Susan could provide. "Doc, I need to know if we can put this technology on more ships," Morrison said. "Right now we only have 23 phase-capable vessels. The aliens still outnumber us." Susan showed him her computer screen. "Jake, this is bigger than just ship technology. Look at these neural pattern readings." The screen displayed brain scans from the crews of phase-shifted ships. The patterns were unlike anything in medical records. "The phase generators are interfacing directly with human neural networks. Our brains are adapting to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Morrison frowned. "Is that dangerous?" "I don't know. But I do know that when we tried to install phase generators on captured alien ships, they didn't work. Only humans can operate this technology. Something about our neural structure makes us compatible with dimensional shifting." A communication alert interrupted their conversation. Morrison activated his portable comm unit. "Morrison here. Sir, this is Commander Hayes on the Phantom. We've just completed our raid on the alien supply depot in the Wolf system. 17 enemy ships destroyed, 0 human casualties. Any problems with the phase technology?" "No, sir, but something strange is happening to my crew. We're starting to see things that aren't there, or maybe things that are there but in different dimensions." Susan grabbed the comm. "Commander, this is Dr. Wright. Describe what you're seeing." Hayes' voice was calm but puzzled. "Doctor, when we're in phase shift, I can see multiple versions of the same space, like looking at the same room through different colored glasses. My navigator says she can see paths through space that lead to places we've never been." Susan and Morrison exchanged worried looks. The technology was changing the crews faster than expected. Meanwhile, in the outer colonies, the war was turning in humanity's favor. Pete Johnson was a 22-year-old communications specialist stationed on Kepler Station. He had volunteered to document the war for future generations. Pete sat at his desk, writing his daily report. Day 15 of the Ghost Ship campaign. 3 more alien fleets retreated from human space today. They're calling our ships Death Phantoms in their communications. Our phase-shifted vessels hit their supply lines, then disappear before they can respond. He paused, looking out the station's viewport at the stars. "The aliens are scared. Really scared. They've never faced an enemy they couldn't hurt, couldn't track, couldn't predict. Captain Garcia's ship, the UES Wraith, attacked the same alien base from 3 different directions at the same time yesterday. The enemy doesn't know how to fight ghosts." Back on Earth, Susan made a breakthrough. She had been studying the quantum signatures of the phase generators when she noticed something incredible. "Jake, come look at this," she called to Morrison, who was reviewing battle reports nearby. The screen showed energy readings from human space stations and planetary defenses. "I've been analyzing the quantum resonance patterns from our defensive installations. The phase technology isn't just working on ships anymore." Morrison studied the data. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we can phase shift entire planets, make them exist partially outside normal spacetime. The aliens won't be able to attack what they can't fully reach." The implications were staggering. Humanity could make their worlds literally untouchable. On the bridge of his fleeing flagship, Admiral HFY received the worst news yet. Captain Vexila of the Hegemony Forces had just transmitted his final report. "Admiral, the humans have done something to their home system." Vexila's message played on the main screen. "We can see Earth and its colonies, but our weapons pass right through them. It's like they exist in a dream. Our entire attack fleet is useless. HFY felt despair settle over him like a heavy blanket. His species had ruled space for 10,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and defeated countless enemies. But humans were something different, something impossible. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Council of 12, his communications officer announced. The screen filled with the angry faces of the alien leaders who had ordered humanity's destruction. HFY knew what they wanted to hear, but he couldn't give them good news. "Admiral, report on the human situation," demanded Chancellor Zix of the Core Worlds. "The humans have developed technology that makes them immune to our weapons. They exist in a space between spaces. We cannot touch them, but they can strike us at will. Half my fleet is destroyed." "That's impossible. I thought so too. But I've seen their ships pass through solid matter. I've watched them appear inside our hulls and destroy us from within. They're not bound by the same physical laws that govern the rest of us." The Chancellor's face grew dark with anger. "Find a way to stop them." "There may not be a way," HFY replied quietly. "We created an enemy that transcends physical reality. The humans aren't just fighting us. They're becoming something beyond our understanding." Back on the UES Phantom, Commander Hayes felt the change happening to his crew and himself. When they were in phase shift, he could see colors that had no names and hear sounds from dimensions that shouldn't exist. His navigator could plot courses through space that folded reality like paper. They were still human, but they were becoming something more. Something that existed in the spaces between worlds, in the gaps between seconds, in the silence between thoughts. The Ghost Fleet was growing stronger, and the galaxy was learning to fear the impossible. Admiral HFY stared at the retreat order on his screen. The words seemed impossible to believe. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Zentari Empire was running away from an enemy. But the humans had left him no choice. "All ships, begin immediate withdrawal from human space," he transmitted to what remained of his fleet. "Fall back to the outer rim and regroup." His communications officer looked up from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving panic signals from Battle Group 4. They report human ships materializing inside their formation." HFY watched his tactical display with growing horror. Red dots representing his ships winked out one by one as the human Ghost Fleet struck without warning. The humans appeared from nowhere, destroyed their targets, and vanished before his forces could respond. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked quietly. 312, sir, down from 847. More than half his fleet was gone. The largest military force ever assembled in the galaxy had been shattered by 23 human vessels that moved like phantoms through space. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the alien retreat with satisfaction. His small fleet had grown to 37 ships as more human vessels received the phase displacement technology. Each new ghost ship made the enemy's situation more hopeless. "Sir, we're receiving reports from all sectors," announced Lieutenant Lisa Park. "The alien fleets are in full retreat. They're abandoning their forward bases and pulling back to their core systems." Navigation Officer Amy Clark looked up from her station. She was a quiet woman in her 30s who had become expert at plotting the impossible courses that phase-shifted ships could take. "Captain, I'm tracking 17 different retreat routes. The aliens are scattering in every direction." Morrison nodded. "Good. Let them run. But we're not done yet. Amy, plot a course directly through the Zentari border. It's time to take this. War to their home systems." Amy smiled. Before the phase technology, such a course would have been suicide. The Zentari border was protected by massive defense stations and minefields, but phase-shifted ships could pass through solid matter as if it wasn't there. "Course plotted, sir. We'll pass directly through their border stations without them being able to stop us." Dr. Susan Wright worked frantically in her laboratory as reports poured in from across human space. The phase technology was spreading faster than she had expected, not just to ships, but to space stations, planetary defenses, and even some buildings on Earth. "Doctor, you need to see these readings," called her assistant Peter Collins. He was pointing at a display showing energy patterns from Luna City. Susan hurried over and studied the data. "This is impossible. The entire city is showing phase signatures." It started 3 hours ago. The residents say they can see through the walls of buildings sometimes, and when they concentrate, they can walk through solid objects. Susan realized what was happening. The phase technology isn't just a weapon. It's changing humanity itself. We're evolving into beings that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. She pulled up more data from colonies across human space. The pattern was the same everywhere. Humans were spontaneously developing the ability to phase shift without any technology at all. Children were the fastest to adapt, treating dimensional shifting like a game. On the colony world of New Boston, 8-year-old Tommy Martinez was showing his friends a new trick. He walked up to a solid wall and with a look of concentration stepped right through it. "How do you do that?" asked his friend Katie Williams. Tommy shrugged. "I just think about being in the space between spaces. It's easy once you know how." Katie tried it herself. She felt a strange tingling sensation, and suddenly she could see the wall becoming transparent. She stepped through it just like Tommy had done. Their teacher, Mrs. Helen Davis, watched in amazement. "Children, this is very important. You must tell your parents about this new ability immediately." But Helen was discovering something too. When she focused her mind, she could see the ghostly outlines of the children even when they were in the next room. Humanity was developing new senses to match their new abilities. Captain Ryan Hayes commanded the UES Phantom as it led the human advance into enemy territory. His ship had been the first to achieve phase displacement, and his crew had become the most skilled at using the technology. "Approaching the Zentari home system," reported his navigator, Lieutenant Beth Stone. "Enemy forces are massing to defend their capital world." Hayes studied the tactical display. Hundreds of alien ships surrounded the planet, their weapons aimed at empty space. They were terrified but trying to make a stand. "Take us through their formation," Hayes ordered. "Let's show them how useless their defenses are." The Phantom became translucent and dove directly toward the enemy fleet. Alien weapons fired desperately, but the energy beams passed harmlessly through the human ship. Hayes guided his vessel through the hull of the enemy flagship, firing his weapons from inside. The alien command ship exploded in a ball of fire. Panic spread through the defending fleet as more human ships materialized around them like hunting wolves. Back on Earth, Pete Johnson continued documenting the incredible changes happening to humanity. He sat in his quarters on Kepler Station, writing his daily report. Day 28 of the Ghost War. The alien coalitions are collapsing. 3 more species have requested surrender terms. They're offering tribute territory, even their most advanced technology in exchange for peace. He paused, looking at his own hands. They had a faint blue glow now, just like the phase-shifted ships. But the strangest thing is what's happening to us. I can walk through walls now if I concentrate. My roommate says he can see into parallel dimensions. The children on the station are playing games that exist in 4 dimensions simultaneously. Pete saved his report and walked to the viewport. Outside, he could see human ships that looked more like ghosts than solid objects. They moved through space in ways that defied physics, taking shortcuts through reality itself. "We're not the same species that the aliens first attacked," he wrote in his personal log. "We're becoming something new, something that exists in the spaces between worlds." On the bridge of his fleeing flagship, Admiral HFY received the final reports from his scattered forces. The news was all bad. Human ghost ships were appearing throughout the galaxy, striking at targets that should have been impossible to reach. "Admiral, we're getting reports from the outer colonies," his tactical officer announced. "Human ships have been sighted in the Andromeda Spiral, the Veil Nebula, and the Dark Zone. They're moving through space faster than our fastest ships." HFY felt despair settle over him completely. "How are they traveling so quickly?" "Sir, our scientists believe they're not traveling through normal space at all. They're using the phase dimension as a shortcut. They can appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly." The Admiral looked out at the stars and wondered if his species would survive what they had awakened. The humans had been a small, isolated race just months ago. Now they were everywhere, moving through the galaxy like ghosts, striking without warning and vanishing without a trace. "Send a message to all surviving fleet commanders. Kethvar ordered. Full retreat to the core worlds. Abandon all forward positions. We're dealing with an enemy that has transcended the normal laws of physics. As his message went out across the galaxy, alien fleets began the long journey home. They left behind empty space stations, abandoned colonies, and the growing legend of the human ghost fleet that could appear anywhere and strike anyone. Humanity had not just survived their first contact with the galaxy. They had become its new masters, ruling through fear of the impossible rather than strength of arms. The retreating fleets carried word of the humans to every corner of space. "That's no ship we know," they whispered. "It moves like a ghost, and there is no defense against phantoms that exist between the spaces of reality." Admiral Morrison floated in the command center of his flagship, the UES Defiance. The ship existed in normal space and the phase dimension at the same time, giving him a view of reality that would have driven him mad 6 months ago. Now it felt natural. "Admiral, we've mapped the remaining alien strongholds," reported Lieutenant Lisa Park. She had changed too. Her eyes now glowed with a soft blue light, and she could see tactical possibilities that existed across multiple dimensions. 17 major systems, 42 colonies, and 3 fortress worlds. Morrison nodded. What had started as Earth's desperate defense had become humanity's expansion across the galaxy. The aliens had awakened something they couldn't control or understand. "Signal the fleet. We advance on all targets simultaneously." Chief Engineer Carl Baker worked in the engineering section of the flagship, but his tools were no longer entirely physical. He could manipulate matter at the quantum level now, shaping reality like clay. The latest ships didn't need traditional engines or weapons. They were becoming extensions of human will. "Admiral, the new phase generators are ready," Carl reported, through the comm system. "These aren't like the old ones. They don't just shift our ships into the phase dimension. They let us exist in multiple dimensions at once." The UES Wraith hung in space near the Zentari border, but Captain Tony Garcia knew it wasn't really there. Not entirely. His ship existed in 17 different dimensional layers simultaneously. He could attack targets in different star systems at the same moment, using the same vessel. "Navigator, lock onto targets in the Vega, Altair, and Sirius systems," Garcia ordered. Lieutenant Maria Santos worked at her station. Her consciousness spread across multiple realities. "Targets locked, sir. 3 enemy fleets, all unaware of our presence. Fire." The UES Wraith opened fire in 3 different locations at once. To observers in each system, it looked like the human ship had appeared from nowhere, destroyed an entire fleet, and vanished. But Garcia knew the truth. It was the same ship, the same moment, the same weapons. They had simply transcended the limitation of existing in only one place at a time. Dr. Susan Wright no longer needed her laboratory. She existed partially in the phase dimension now. Her consciousness expanded beyond normal human limits. She could think at the speed of light and see patterns that existed across multiple realities. Standing in her old office, she watched the transformation of humanity with wonder and concern. "We're not becoming better humans," she spoke to herself. "We're becoming something entirely new." Her daughter, Lieutenant Kelly Wright, piloted the most advanced fighter ever built. The UES Ghost could phase-shift individual components while keeping others in normal space. Kelly could fire weapons from reality while remaining untouchable in the phase dimension. "Mom, can you hear me across the dimensional barrier?" Kelly's voice came through Susan's enhanced senses. "I can hear you, honey. How are you feeling?" "Different. I can see time branching in front of me. I can choose which future to make real." "Is this what evolution feels like?" Susan smiled sadly. "I think so, but I'm not sure we're still human anymore." Governor Helen Davis stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching human children play games that existed in 4 dimensions. The kids chased each other through solid walls, threw balls that curved through space-time, and spoke in languages that included concepts from parallel realities. "They're adapting faster than the adults," observed Dr. Frank Miller, the station's chief scientist. He was one of the few humans who hadn't developed phase abilities yet. The children treat dimensional shifting like learning to walk. Helen nodded. She had developed her own abilities slowly, starting with the power to see through solid objects. Now she could step between dimensions as easily as walking from one room to another. "Doctor, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 more alien species today," she reported. "They're offering everything they have in exchange for protection." The irony wasn't lost on her. The species that had once tried to destroy humanity now begged for human protection from their own former allies. Admiral Kethvar sat in his command bunker deep beneath the surface of his home world. The mighty Zentari Empire was crumbling. Human, ghost ships appeared in their most secure systems, struck without warning and vanished before defenders could respond. "Sir, we've lost contact with the 7th Fleet," his aide reported. "They were investigating reports of human activity in the Outer Rim." "How many ships?" "All of them, sir. 200 vessels. The last message said they saw human ships appearing inside their formation, but the signatures showed it was the same ship in multiple locations." Kethvar closed his eyes. The humans had broken every rule of physics. They existed in spaces that shouldn't exist, fought battles that defied logic, and won wars that couldn't be won. Captain Morrison walked through the corridors of his ship, but he wasn't really walking. His consciousness flowed through the phase dimension, touching every part of his vessel and crew. He could sense his people's thoughts, feel their growing abilities, and see the future spreading out before them in countless possibilities. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Core Worlds Alliance." Lisa Park's voice reached him across dimensional barriers. "They want to negotiate." Morrison smiled. The Core Worlds had been the strongest supporters of humanity's destruction. Now they were begging for mercy. "Tell them we'll consider their proposal, but make it clear that we're not the same species they decided to destroy." Pete Johnson floated in his quarters, writing his reports without touching his keyboard. His thoughts directly interfaced with the computer systems, letting him work at the speed of consciousness. Day 45 of the transformation. Humanity has claimed 17 star systems today, not through conquest but through simple presence. We appear in their space and they surrender. The galaxy is learning that resistance is impossible against beings who exist outside normal reality. He paused, feeling the thoughts of his fellow humans across the station. They were becoming a collective consciousness, individual minds linked by their shared existence in the phase dimension. The children born this week can phase shift from birth. They exist in multiple dimensions naturally. I think we're witnessing the birth of a new species, one that's no longer bound by the physical laws that govern the rest of the universe. On the bridge of the UES Phantom, Commander Ryan Hayes watched the surrender of another alien fleet. The enemy ships powered down their weapons and broadcast their submission across all frequencies. "Sir, they're asking for safe passage back to their home systems," reported his communications officer. Hayes considered the request. The humans could destroy the fleet easily, but that wasn't necessary anymore. The aliens were broken, scattered, and afraid. They would spread word of humanity's power wherever they went. Grant their request, but make sure they understand that we can reach them anywhere in the galaxy if they threaten human interests again. As the alien ships departed, Hayes reflected on what humanity had become. They were no longer the desperate defenders of a single world. They were the hunters now, stalking through the galaxy with abilities that transcended physical reality. The universe had tried to destroy humanity, but instead had created something far more powerful. Something that existed in the spaces between worlds, in the silence between thoughts, in the pause between one moment and the next. The hunting had begun, and there was nowhere in the galaxy that the human ghost fleet could not reach. 5 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the galaxy. Admiral Morrison stood on what had once been the bridge of his flagship, but the UES Defiance was no longer a ship in any traditional sense. It existed in 17 dimensions, simultaneously a living extension of human consciousness that touched every corner of the galaxy. Morrison himself had changed beyond recognition. His body flickered between solid matter and pure energy. His consciousness spanned multiple realities, allowing him to command fleets that existed in parallel universes. Yet he still remembered being the desperate captain who faced impossible. odds near Earth's moon. "Admiral, the Galactic Peace Council is requesting another meeting," announced Lieutenant Lisa Park. She appeared as a shimmering form of light, her consciousness distributed across three-dimensional layers. 17 more species want to join the human protection zone. Morrison nodded. The galaxy had learned to live with humanity's new reality. Those who accepted human protection prospered under the shield of beings who could exist everywhere at once. Those who resisted simply disappeared when ghost fleets materialized inside their strongholds. Tell them we'll consider their request, but remind them that joining our protection means accepting our rules. On Earth, the transformation was complete. Cities existed partially outside normal space, making them eternal and untouchable. Humans walked through walls as easily as walking through doorways. Children played games that spanned multiple universes, chasing each other through realities that adults couldn't even perceive. Dr. Susan Wright had become something like the keeper of human knowledge. Her consciousness existed in the space between spaces, cataloging the infinite possibilities that dimensional travel had opened. She no longer had a physical form, but her thoughts could be felt by any human who needed guidance. "We've discovered the source of our transformation." Her voice whispered across dimensional barriers to those who could hear. "The phase generators didn't create our abilities. They awakened something that was always inside us. Humans were meant to transcend physical existence. Captain Ryan Hayes commanded the most advanced vessel in existence, but calling it a ship would be misleading. The UES Phantom was a gateway between realities, a bridge that allowed human consciousness to flow freely through infinite dimensions. Hayes himself had become the first truly multidimensional human, existing in every possible version of reality simultaneously. "Captain, we're detecting something unusual in the void sector," reported his navigator. She existed as pure thought now, her consciousness unbound by physical form. "There's another species there, one that exists naturally in the phase dimension." Hayes felt a mixture of excitement and caution. "Show me." The main display filled with images of beings made of living light. They moved through the phase dimension as naturally as humans once walked on solid ground. Their ships weren't built but grown from crystallized thought. They had been watching humanity's transformation with great interest. "First contact protocol?" asked his tactical officer. "No," Hayes replied. "This time, we're not the newcomers. We're greeting fellow travelers in the space between spaces." Former Admiral Kethvar lived now as a refugee under human protection. The irony wasn't lost on him that the species he had tried to destroy now shielded him from the chaos that consumed his former empire. He worked as an advisor to human forces, helping them understand alien psychology and technology. "The young humans don't understand fear the way we do," he observed to his human handler, a woman named Beth who existed in both dimensions simultaneously. "They see the universe as a playground with infinite possibilities. To them, reality is just one option among many." Beth smiled, her form shifting between solid matter and energy. "Is that so different from how children always see the world? Maybe we're just growing up as a species." Kethvar watched human children phase through the walls of his quarters, laughing as they chased creatures that existed only in parallel dimensions. "Your children are born knowing things that our greatest scientists never imagined. They speak languages that include concepts from other realities. They're not just human anymore." Captain Morrison walked through the rebuilt ruins of New Tokyo, a city that existed in 6 dimensions simultaneously. The architecture was impossible by old standards, with buildings that were bigger inside than outside, and rooms that connected to places on other worlds. He stopped at a memorial dedicated to the humans who had died in the first alien attacks. The names were carved in quantum stone that existed in all realities at once, ensuring they would never be forgotten. "We've become what they tried to destroy," Morrison said to himself. "But we're also more than what we ever imagined we could be." Pete Johnson continued his documentation of humanity's transformation, though his writing now existed as patterns of thought shared across the human collective consciousness. His words reached every human mind instantaneously, becoming part of their shared memory. Day 1825 of the New Age. Humanity has claimed its place among the transcendent species of the galaxy. We rule not through force, but through the simple fact that we exist everywhere at once. No species can hide from beings who can phase through any barrier, travel to any location, and exist in multiple realities simultaneously. He paused, feeling the thoughts of millions of humans across the galaxy. But perhaps most importantly, we've learned that evolution isn't about becoming stronger or smarter. It's about becoming more than what you were. We were a species trapped on one world, bound by the laws of physics. Now we're the living spaces between those laws. The beings of light approached human space with careful respect. Their leader, a creature that existed as pure consciousness, communicated directly with Captain Hayes through thoughts that transcended language. "We greet the new walkers between worlds," the being said. "You have joined the community of species that exist beyond physical reality. Welcome to the infinite." Hayes felt the presence of countless other transcendent species spread across dimensions. He was only beginning to understand. Humanity wasn't alone in their transformation. They had joined a community of beings who had evolved beyond the need for solid matter and single realities. "We accept your welcome," Hayes replied. "But we're still learning what it means to exist in infinite dimensions. That is the journey of all transcendent species. You will spend eternity discovering new possibilities. The universe is far larger than any single reality can contain." On Earth, in a playground that existed in 7 dimensions, human children played with beings from other realities. They built castles from crystallized time, raced through parallel versions of the same space, and spoke in harmonies that included sounds from impossible places. Morrison watched them play and realized that this was humanity's true victory. Not the defeat of the alien fleets or the conquest of the galaxy, but the transformation into something capable of infinite growth and discovery. The children would grow up knowing that reality was just the beginning, not the limit. They would explore dimensions that their parents couldn't imagine, and build relationships with beings made of pure thought and living mathematics. Humanity had faced extinction and chosen transcendence instead. They had become ghosts among the stars, but ghosts that chose to haunt the universe not with death, but with endless wonder and infinite possibility. The ghost fleet still patrolled the galaxy, but now they were shepherds rather than hunters, protecting a peace built on the understanding that some things cannot be fought, only accepted. The universe had learned to live with humanity's impossible existence, and humanity had learned to live without limits. In the space between spaces, where thought became reality and dreams took physical form, the newest members of the transcendent community continued their eternal journey into the infinite.